Welcome to Value Added, the real estate podcast where we speak with the brightest minds in the world of real estate who provide, create, and realize value in an ever-changing market. If you're a real estate professional delivering value to your clients, an investor creating value not seen by others, or a busy professional who passively invests in real estate to grow the value of their hard-earned dollar, then you're in the right place. And now your host, Nick Walters.
Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Value Added, the real estate podcast. On this week's episode, we're chatting with Yonah Weiss. Yonah is a business development associate with Madison Specs, a Lakewood, New Jersey-based cost segregation and engineering firm. They also have offices in Ohio, Dallas, Houston, and New York City. Yonah is a specialist in the practice of cost segregation and is a sought-after resource throughout the commercial real estate industry. Yonah has hosted or been a guest on dozens of podcasts discussing the details of the cost segregation process and the benefits for investors and owners of real estate. He has also authored numerous articles for industry publications, and as an expert in LinkedIn networking, he has mentored dozens in the practice of using the platform as a springboard to accelerate business opportunities. Yonah graduated in 2002 with a Bachelor of Arts from San Diego State University and is an active volunteer in numerous nonprofit and charity organizations. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Yonah Weiss, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you very much, Nick. A pleasure to be here today. Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Tell the listeners a little bit more about how you got to where you are today and a little bit more about your professional background.
Well, my professional background is, I don't have as strong of a resume as most people. I actually spent, after college, probably about close to 15 years, not doing anything what a lot of people would consider professional. I was studying for many years. I was a teacher, although, not as professional, but I ended up starting a nonprofit organization. And I was really just, trying to live and had a family, just trying to provide for them and do what I love, which was my passion, which was just teaching and helping other people. So that kind of led me to, not such a strong income, which led me to find something else to supplement that. And real estate was just like a no-brainer to me. I had a bunch of friends that were doing real estate and in many different capacities. And I just wanted to explore. And since I have such a love for knowledge and learning and teaching, I just started learning everything there was to know about real estate. And as soon as I did, I found a newfound passion and really, so many opportunities that just really opened up for me at that time. So that's kind of a little bit of my history. I went on to be a commercial mortgage broker for a little while, a residential broker. I just trying to get my feet wet in every which way I could. Did a few fix and flips with a partner, a friend of mine, and quickly learned I did not want to do any more of those. And then I ended up, finding a job with this company, Madison, which was kind of out of the blue, but wound up being a great opportunity for me and for them, quite frankly, which has led me to become a cost segregation expert, which really, if you think about it, I'm only as an expert because my team is really experts. The largest national cost segregation firm, been doing this for decades. So really I had the opportunity to sit with and, learn side by side from the real experts in the industry that didn't have the same passion of teaching and the passion of being able to help other people, through various platforms that I did. So it was a great kind of coupling of that I could now take that knowledge to the world.
So let's dig into cost segregation. So I want you to take some time to explain to our listeners what cost segregation is and how valuable it is to both the active investor as well as the passive investor.
Okay, well, that should be quite a task. But I'll break it down as simply as possible because, like you said, simply put, it's a way to depreciate each asset, each component of a building at a different rate. So let's take a step back and understand depreciation, because depreciation is somewhat confusing. It's a tax deduction that the IRS gives you from your income tax when you buy a property. Okay, and basically what that allows you to do is take the entire building cost. Okay, you bought a building for $1 million. Even if you only put down 200,000, that building cost, that $1 million now can be a tax write-off. You literally get to write off from your income tax the entire cost of the building. But you do that over a long period of time. So generally speaking, it's over a 27.5 period timetable, which, we're talking about multifamily, that's the time over that. Other commercial properties are on a 39-year schedule. So that essentially allows you to take about 2 to 3% of that purchase cost, and every single year take, 1/27.5, whatever, if there's a way to say that, over of the building cost over as a income tax write-off each year for the next 27 years. So cost segregation comes in, and really part of the tax code that discusses depreciation actually puts different assets and different types of property in a building on different schedules. Now, if you don't know any better, or your accountant doesn't know any better, or is not proactive, you'll just take that entire cost and lump it as one sum and take a little bit of deduction every single year. But the proper and the correct way of doing it is actually cost segregation, is actually breaking down that building into different components. Like, for example, you have personal property, things in the building that are not part of the structure, shelving, I'm looking just in your room, any type of plants, or, any type of furnishings or equipment. You can take all of that on a 5-year schedule. That means you can take the entire value once you have identified what that value is, and take that value as a tax write-off over the first 5 years. Okay, so we're essentially taking, many times, multifamily properties, 15 to 30%, okay, of the building value, the building cost, as a front-loaded tax deduction, as opposed to taking a 2 to 3% tax deduction every single year. So how that affects, you and me, how that affects passive investors, active investors, it's going to affect them differently. And essentially, when you do depreciation, okay, and like I said before, this is automatic, deduction. You put this on your tax return, which allows you to reduce your income tax liability. Let's say, take our example again, $1 million property. Okay, you bought it for $1 million. You're making your net operating income, how much you keep in your pocket after all expenses, after paying the mortgage, after paying the, all the utilities. You're left with, let's say, $70,000 net operating income on the year. You all automatically detract from that depreciation, which is another expense, yet a paper expense, because you get to keep that money in your pocket. Let's say that's about $30,000. Your straight line depreciation, you're at 1/27th of $1 million, and you can literally only pay taxes on $40,000 remaining. However, comes cost segregation and says, wait a second, let's take more deductions up front. And we can essentially take, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 as a first year tax deduction, first 5 years tax deduction, and reduce your income tax liability to zero. Okay, that's essentially how cost segregation works. When you are a active sponsor in a deal, okay, let's say you own an apartment building and you have investors alongside with you. Each person, according to their shares, according to their percentage of ownership, will have a percentage of what they're getting from that property. So you'll have your percentage of income, and you'll have your percentage of expenses, including depreciation. And so that's how it gets passed, kind of flows through to each party member. And I'm simplifying things because there are many different ways to structure this, but in many cases, that's how it works.
What are the similarities and differences between cost segregation and accelerated depreciation?
So essentially, they're the same thing. I mean, accelerating depreciation, if you want to get really technical, there's, for any accountants listening here, there's something called straight line depreciation, which is just taking the entire lump sum and dividing that equally over 27.5 years. There's something called double declining balance, or 200 declining balance. And there's something called 100 declining balance. And so in a technical sense of the term, that's one way to accelerate depreciation, that you can actually front load a tiny percentage to those earlier years and lesser in the later years over a 27-year period. But when we talk about cost segregation, what we're doing is accelerating that depreciation as well. And that's essentially the same thing. So you're taking, the 5-year property and accelerating that to actually depreciate on a 5-year schedule. The 15-year property, which is stuff like land improvements, we're taking all that, identifying that, and putting that on a 15-year schedule. So we're accelerating the process of those assets as opposed to lumping everything together in 27 years.
For our listeners out there who don't understand being able to front load this huge write-off, this is one of the biggest advantages of owning commercial real estate, income producing real estate. There's no other investment where you can write off the value of a depreciating asset, what commercial real estate is. Secondly, you're able to accelerate that the depreciation write-off from a 27.5 period to a 5-year period or a 7-year period. Your general partner, if you're a limited partner, your general partner, their business plan is not to hold this asset for 27.5 years. So being able to reap that full tax advantage during the hold period is tremendous. Wouldn't you agree with that, Yonah?
Yeah, take the benefits now. Why miss out on those tax deductions that you're allowed to take? It's like you're being offered these extra tax deductions, and just by, I guess a combination in many cases of laziness or just ignorance on the part of your accountant or yourself, it's just a matter of, doing it and learning about it and doing it, then taking advantage of the tax deductions you're allowed to take advantage of.
Also, when you look at the pro rata share of a limited partner's profit, that ability to be able to write off the depreciation in the shorter end of the hold period, you're able to juice those returns considerably with that additional write-off.
Absolutely.
Let's move on. I want to stay within cost segregation, but I want to dig into a deal that you've recently been involved with while you were consulting with a past acquisition. So walk us through a deal that you have been a part of in recent memory where a developer investor, they hired you to consult from a cost segregation standpoint, and at the end of the day, the savings that you saved this company. Walk us through a deal like that.
Sure. It's important to note that the savings, the depreciation deductions are going to be the same, if the building is the same type of building. What I mean by that is, you may have a multifamily building and you're getting, a 20% tax deduction of that cost in the first 5 years, and you can front load that into the first year with a new tax law called bonus depreciation. But the being able to actually benefit from those deductions, that's actually different. And that's what I want to point out here in describing a situation, so our listeners can better understand if this is going to benefit them as much. So there's something called a real estate professional. This is an IRS term. Okay, this is a tax term that if you spend more than 50% of your time involved, basically you're full-time in the real estate profession. Okay, if you're a broker, manager, you're buying deals, you're operating, you're doing construction, all that kind of stuff, and you're involved that you now get to use depreciation and any form of depreciation, concentrating a lot of it, to offset your active income as well. So generally speaking, depreciation is a great thing because it's used to, offset the income from your properties. But if you have too much of it, if you, have more deductions than you have income, if you're not a real estate professional, you're limited to how much of those deductions you can use to offset your other income. So if you're a real estate professional, that's why I want to point this out, because we can create $1 million of tax deductions, but if you can only take $100,000 of those tax deductions, you're just creating what's called a passive loss. And so you're not necessarily benefiting from it unless you're a real estate professional. So that's why I want to, point out a great story. A client of mine who's, now a friend, he's one of the top brokers in his county, real estate broker, residential broker. He's doing hundreds. I think I interviewed him on my podcast and, as well. And he at some number, like over the past 3 years, he's closed like over 1,000 deals. So that's like a deal a week. I mean, it's like, a crazy amount, a deal a day, something like that. It's like a crazy amount of deals, like him and his team. He has a whole team working under him, but anyways, very top broker. He's doing, making millions of dollars, but in commissions, right? And he decided to go into real estate investing as well. In his real estate deal, because he's making so much money, he wanted to put it into assets to reap those benefits. He didn't know about tax deductions. He didn't know about depreciation, cost segregation. So he told me the year before, we met, he had paid about $350,000 in income tax. Okay. So he made, after all his other, depreciation from his regular properties, everything else, made, well over $1 million and just getting taxed at a very high rate. We came in, did a cost seg on one of the buildings he purchased for $4.5 million. Okay. Multifamily building, $4.5 million. We ended up finding over $1 million of accelerated depreciation in the building, which means, instead of taking about $100,000 deduction every year, he was now able to take a $1 million deduction. And he did what was called the 100% bonus depreciation, which allows you, the new tax law allows you to take the entire amount of accelerated depreciation in year number one. So he took all of that in first year and literally, told me he did not pay a single dollar in taxes that year, the first year since he's been a broker, that he hasn't paid any tax. So that's the type of, deductions we're talking about when we're able to create, these type of tax benefits that people, especially if you're a real estate professional, you could benefit from. Had he not been a real estate professional, he would have been able to use those deductions only to offset income from his properties. Okay. And so if you're a W-2 worker or you have any other type of job and you're not a real estate professional, you may not be able to benefit from this as much.
This is a great example because I'm a real estate broker. So I have a residential brokerage audience. So I think this is a perfect example of being able to utilize your career as a real estate professional. And if you are or are not investing in real estate, this is a heck of a way to take advantage of, right? To take advantage of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're a real estate broker, you should be investing in real estate in order to reap the tax benefits that come along with that. Because if not, you're just missing out. It's like, it's like having a golden ticket, right? But never knowing that you had it, right? It's like under your pillow, and you have the winning lottery ticket and it's under your pillow. You never know about it. So that's what the real estate professional status is.
I also wanted to ask about the timeline. You purchase an asset. Is there a window that may expire on being able to reap the full benefits of a full cost segregation study?
There is not, there's not really a window. I'd say within the, after 5-6 years, that's really where, the main benefit will run out because you don't have to do the cost segregation study in the first year of ownership. You can actually do it retroactively. You can get those tax deductions without having to amend your tax returns, as far back as you want to go. After 5-6 years, depending on the size of the property, it actually makes, it diminishes the amount of tax benefit you'll have from it because a lot of those assets have already fully depreciated, but you still can get that. So I would say, it's definitely worthwhile to look into what it's going to look like for you if you need those tax deductions. That's probably, one of the reasons we offer a free service where we'll actually run an analysis of any property to show people and help educate people what your tax benefit would look like, if you did a cost segregation study versus if you didn't. And just looking at a timeline over, the next 5 years, or 10 years or whatever, what are my tax benefits going to look like? It's really incredible to see. Almost a no-brainer, once you look at those numbers.
Let's shift gears a little bit, Yonah. I want to talk about your involvement and your utilization of social media. We first connected through, I believe it was LinkedIn. You have a great following on LinkedIn. You've recently started a Facebook page more geared toward real estate professionals networking around the country. Yeah. I want you to walk me through how your social media efforts have evolved over the last, handful of years. And, let's dive into some of the various ways that you're, number one, developing business through social media. And number two, being a connector as I am, utilizing those platforms to connect people around the country.
Absolutely. Probably 3 years ago, I didn't even really know what social media was. I mean, so obviously I knew what it was, but I never really used it. I had a LinkedIn profile probably for about 10, 12 years, right? But it was more like a place to put your resume, when people looking for jobs. And that's what it was. A couple of years ago, LinkedIn kind of had a big shift and it turned into like a social media networking, not just networking, but really like an engaged platform of people creating content and using it as like a networking platform, as opposed to just like a resume and headhunters and job seekers platform. Comparing, really competing in a way with Facebook. At least that's how I saw it. Yet it still retained that very professional demeanor. A lot of positivity, a lot of inspiration. Not too much casual stuff going on there. So I kind of was drawn to it because I liked that professionalism, and I liked that I was seeing people who were really cared about personal development and cared about professional development, and I found a lot of like-minded people. That being said, it was no longer relegated to those people that that you went to school with or that you're friends with. It was really more about how can you actually network and expand that network to a national or even international platform. And I saw very quickly that there were people creating content and getting a lot of exposure through that content. So I saw it as a medium to kind of just spread the word about what I was doing as business. Cost segregation was something almost no one knew about. And I started off just, posting regularly every day for a long time. And people started reaching out to me and were curious about it. And I found that, like you said, being a connector was really what made all the difference. So I made a conscious effort to do whatever I can. It's kind of more about my personality, that I like to help people. So a lot of my posting and a lot of my engagement on social media is less about, me, wanting to just put myself out there. I know there are a lot of people out there that are just like me, right? My approach is a little bit different than that. I try to approach about you, like try to help other people. So a lot of that involves engaging on other people's posts. So commenting, because that helps their posts be spread out to a further network, and connecting other people. So that's why I created this Facebook group recently, Real Estate Connections, which is really just the ability for me to kind of bring really big hitters in the real estate world and people that want to grow and want to network. And I've kind of used myself as like a platform for other people to connect with each other. And I did that as well by creating a virtual real estate networking event. So I do that every week now, and really just kind of started because of the whole COVID-19 situation. We can't go outside. We can't go to in-person networking events. I decided to create an online one. And so I was able to do that, doing it on a weekly basis. And it's an incredible thing, bring people together from all over the country. And again, like-minded people, people who are interested in learning, who are interested in growing, who are interested in networking. And I think it's a great privilege that I have to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great. It's been a great way to be able to connect with fellow professionals that kind of had that same mindset. Yeah. All great stuff. I'll be able to link that to the show notes. Also, I want to plug your podcast. I believe it's called the Weiss Advice. Just take 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So I've, over the past few years, because of the social network and everything, I've actually been a guest on over 100 podcasts, mostly, probably almost exclusively in the real estate world. And that's given me an ability to kind of use this platform indirectly and getting my message across. But through that, I've seen the incredible power that a podcasting has. And I really enjoy doing it. So I enjoy talking to people. And I'd like to be on the other side of the mic also asking questions. That's really why I started Weiss Advice. Less about subject matter. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are, dealing with subject matter. We can learn a tremendous amount from them, but mine is more just about people and kind of bringing, again, using that as a platform to kind of connect people. So I'll bring in, guests of mine who are, people that I know in my network, and just share some knowledge that they have, some insight and advice and, stories or what have you about their journey, and sharing that with my network.
We're going to conclude this episode with the hard-hitting questions. These are the questions that we ask every one of our listeners. I like to start out the hard-hitting questions by asking, what is your why?
My why is a combination of two things. One is my family. So I have a beautiful family, wife, 6 kids, and, giving back for them, providing for them. And that's really, in the end of the day, what it all comes down to. the second thing, which is really coupled with that, is I want to provide a bigger, just an insight really into the whole world. And that's kind of why I'm so big on social media, that I'm Jewish, I'm outwardly Orthodox Hasidic Jew, but I'm a little bit different than a lot. And the thing is, I like to break stereotypes. So I want to kind of spread that message that, yeah, you can be different. You can be who you are. It doesn't matter what you are, what you look like. If you are out there to help people and provide value, then you're gonna do well in this world.
I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that. Next, besides your alarm clock, what gets you out of bed every morning?
It's really my relationship with God. I'm a very spiritual person. I get up in the morning, every morning, and pray. That's the first thing I do. They're the first words out of my mouth. And for the first basically 2 hours out of my day, it's all focused on that.
What's one book that you've read that has contributed to your overall success or contributed to growth in your life?
There have been so many, but one I'll choose is a book called Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. So it's a sequel to Crush It. So that was great also, but Crushing It was really more a lot of personal accounts of how to use social media to bring value to people and to grow your business. And so that was very insightful. I used a lot of that as practical wisdom to apply.
I'm a big fan of Gary V. I have been following him since 2008, when he was still doing Wine Library TV videos on his own. Gary Vaynerchuk he's a hell of a marketer. Next question, how do you like to pay it forward?
Helping people out. Like I said, I use my social media to help other people. Like literally, I'll do posts, someone looking for a job. I'll use my network and my platform to advertise that, or I do a Self-Sunday promo on my LinkedIn. So anyone can post anything in the comments about what they want to promote themselves. And so that really, gets thousands of people looking at that, and an opportunity for someone who may post something on their own page and get, 10, 100, 200 views on that. No one's really looking at it. Here, they'll do it on mine, and many more people get to see that.
Yonah, you're a graduate of San Diego State University. What's one piece of advice that you would tell yourself now, graduating from San Diego State, when you did?
Find a mentor. Find someone who, you look at what your goals are, what you want to become. Find someone who you think has accomplished that, or even has, further along the way than you, and just follow them by asking the questions, sitting by their side, just watching what they do.
Yonah, how can our listeners get a hold of you or learn a little bit more about you?
Best way, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend a lot of time. You can also go to YonahWeiss.com. And there you can find a lot about me. You can find about cost segregation there. You can find about our podcast and everything else.
Yonah Weiss, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for your time and adding your value today.
Been a pleasure, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave a rating and a review, which will help us introduce the podcast to other listeners. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will give you access to other episodes you may have missed. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.